back off. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the clap on both sides. We are back after much living life and stuff to podcasting, having scotch, and what are you drinking? You got
Oh, this masthead paradise. It's
Masthead
paradise.
Paradise. So Scotch and Masthead Paradise with a little kicker of Knob Creek because we're still gunning for that.
Hey,
And we
Knob.
are back. Yep. Wood, Air, and Metal. We were what? Like rated number 5 jazz podcast in Albania or something?
That works.
Well, I got that going for me.
Yeah.
And all that other stuff. So we figured we'd kick this back up and tackle a small subject of, I don't know, AI and music, because this happens to be the thing that some people are panicking about, some people are praising, other people are just like, can I make money off of riding this train? So I sit on the money aspect of it.
Yeah. I mostly sit on the I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it either. It was like there was a Mad Panic article that came out a few days ago saying that there was an AI powered drone that the Air Force had, and it went out and it was just like it would be given targets and it would have to ask the operator if it could fire or not. And so it kept, and the operator would sometimes be yes and sometimes be no. And the operator must have said no too many times, so the thing turned around and killed the operator because it was
Oh, right.
interfering. This is the story, at least, and turned around and killed the operator because it interfered with the mission. So obviously that sent shockwaves through everything. So they decided, okay, well, we need to shut this thing down. It shut the thing down. They rebooted the program, went out again, doing the same thing, and then it realized that it could be shut down via the communication system. So it took out the communication system so it could continue to do its mission
I
unabated.
I just have a
Now
hard
that
time believing that's actually true.
Oh, it's not true. It's not true.
Yeah.
But everybody ran with it as a terror story.
Yeah.
I reached out to a military buddy of mine. I'm like, I am extremely suspect, and he's like, yeah, no, that never happened. Not at
I
all.
guess like so in my like day gig, I work a lot with that kind of stuff, and
Mhm.
it's not what people think it is. People think that AI is this like thinking machine
No,
that
not at
like
all.
makes decisions, can like form thoughts and like decide like it's sentient or something like that. But it's not that at all. That's not even it's not like that at all. Even if you look at like ChatGPT, that stuff, which is fun if you haven't played with it.
Yeah.
Um, you can tell though if you play with it for a little while, it's really just like a database of information,
Yep.
and then it sort of cleverly knows how to put it together. Now it's fascinating how it works, and it's a very good language model. But
Mhm.
like ChatGPT isn't sitting there like quant, contemplating like so I'm on a train and I'm moving away from a clock. If I was going the speed of light, blah blah blah, and like all of a sudden discovers relativity or whatever, like it's not doing anything like that. It's not like that's not how it works. It just takes the information it has. So I guess just in terms of the music side of things is it's not saying like, oh, I wonder what sounds good. If I tried all these things, what would sound good? It's kind of just taking the information that it's hearing sounds good. And even like if you look at ChatGPT, which I'm assuming that most of the music models are somewhat similar in a way, you don't necessarily know where the information's coming from, but it's still coming from like it's like a probability sort of like I have a ready for a premium Microsoft thing.
Ooh.
Um, anyway, um, it's just looking at information that it's like, oh, people really like this music. I was told that this music was popular, and this was a chord progression that was popular, and it's been in these many songs. So if I make something with that chord progression, and I start the melody on the third, and you do this kind of like because this many songs started with on the third, it's kind of like it's not doing anything very creative. It's just sort of making stuff. I don't know. It's kind of fun. Another one is kind of funny, and I'll let you go for a second. It's just like when drum machines came out. That was like the big first like music modeling, like like we're gonna get rid of drummers kind of thing, and maybe to some degree it's gotten rid of some drummers, for some genres of music or whatever. Not that they were really there to begin with, but it's kind of funny. Like rap bands now like have the best drummers on the
Yeah.
planet in their bands. I mean, it's sort of this funny thing. So it's like even though that's gotten really advanced and stuff like that, I mean, and you pretty much have any groove you can think of, it it's still not having a drummer. So I I don't know. I guess in general, I'm not that worried about it, and I certainly don't think it's like coming after the modern jazz world or
No,
whatever.
that's like I remember dating myself on this one, but do you remember the 3DO? It was a
Is that
gaming.
a gaming? You said was that
Yeah.
Nintendo or something?
No, it was a third. It was my neck, right? No, it wasn't my neck. It was somebody else. Either way, it was like the first big 32-bit CD system. Whatever
Yeah,
came
yeah.
out before PlayStation, but right around that time. And I was working at a gaming store at that time.
Was it a TurboGrafx 16 though? Because that was
No,
like my
no,
jam.
no. It was after that. Not the same company.
Yeah,
NEC did TurboGrafx and SuperGrafx and the those ones. But anyways, there was a music program you could buy for the thing where it would make music up. And one of the guys came in. I didn't have one. I wasn't going to pay that much money for something like that. But he was like, "It's actually, he's like, doesn't have a lot of dynamics, but it does a decent job of coming up with something. If you just and so in one sense, the AI and computer assistance in music was probably in its infancy back then, but it's
yeah,
exactly as described it now, is where it's taking the information you're giving it and manipulating it in within those parameters. Which, in one sense, that's music making to begin with. You're taking the information you want and putting it within a certain set of parameters and writing it out and or playing it and so on. Now, granted, that's like sitting down on with a blank score and coming up with a 12-tone row type of thing and using that as a compositional device. And then there's, I guess you could almost say, if we're going to compare the two, the more human aspect of composition where you're just doodling on your instrument and you're like, oh, that was kind of cool. And so
yeah,
you write it out and then you develop that idea. And that, I think, is that's just not happening at any significant level, period, because that doesn't have the emotive interaction that happens when you're sitting with an instrument and you find something that kind of is like, oh, that's a kind of a cool idea, and then you start building it.
yeah.
So I think you're completely right in one, the panic's overblown, but we'll leave that to the side. But just talking about, like, because there was that song with Drake or whatever that came out, Drake and The Weeknd, that wasn't either of them. It was just an AI took both their voices
Oh, right.
together to make up a song,
Sure.
and it did it pretty dang convincingly. I was like, all
Yeah,
right,
yeah. You see those things like Katy Perry sings
yeah,
Bohemian Rhapsody or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. Or, or my favorite thing is to watch like the presidents play video games, or it's
All
got
right.
Trump and Biden and Obama,
Ha-
and even Ben Shapiro showed up in some of them. And it's so damn funny.
Have
Oh
you
my
have you
god!
seen the? Somebody sent me the Arnold Schwarzenegger singing the Sound of
Yes,
Music.
yes, it's so good. So
The heroes are alive. Yeah.
get to the chopper. But it's so you're dealing with the fundamental things of somebody's taste pulling all the information and telling it what to do. You don't have some computer sitting in a warehouse somewhere being like, oh, I'm just going to do this, at least not yet. God only knows what
Yeah,
these.
in general, it's not creative, right? Like that's the best part that it's missing. I mean, could it make derivative music that sounds that people like or whatever, and it'll and end up being popular? I mean, it might.
Well, absolutely, because that Drake song was like skyrocketing like crazy.
Yeah,
Because everybody thought, one, they thought it was legit, and two, it was that convincing. Which, to hop, let's play a little bit of the AI advocate thing. It's like the question is like, what is? It leads to the question of what is creativity. Like, what is the fundamental bottom line that makes something creative? Because in one sense, we're all writing stuff that's derivative from what we've heard.
sure.
It's just the nature of it. You get exposed to it. There's certain tastes that you like, so those become a part of you. It's like when some stuff that I've been writing, I'm like, holy crap, that's me in my teenage years listening to U2, or that's me
Oh,
playing Doom.
sure.
And so I remember with one track I did for something. My buddy was like, oh yeah, that totally sounds like Doom, and it kicked the wind out of my sails because I thought I came up with something really cool, and then I was like, oh no, nope, that is like
Yeah.
directly from Mick Gordon type of thing. Not the same, but like the same,
Right.
stylistically that there. So with those things out there, it all depends to a degree, broad brush, but it all depends on how you define what's truly creative. Because it's like when bands or students are tell me like, "Oh, my band just does something completely original," and it's like, no, no, you don't. You don't.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Though I think like you suggested though, is it doesn't know what it sounds like, right? It doesn't have any frame of reference.
Yeah.
It can only go by what somebody said sounded cool, or maybe it said, "Oh, I've noticed a lot of people think this little passage sounds cool," as a data point. But if you're just sitting by your guitar and you play something, you're like, "Oh, what's that?" Like it doesn't know it doesn't do that. It can't do that. Now it might be derivative of something else, so maybe it could get there from some other direction.
Well, in one sense, it's a derivative of the spectacle culture. If we're gonna throw
Yeah.
things back.
Well, so I was gonna say that the Drake thing or whatever, that's pure spectacle culture, I would assume.
Yep.
Um, is my semi novice opinion now that I had like one like hour long podcast. If you haven't listened to that one, you have to listen
Oh,
to the
that was like 3 hours. I thought that was like
the
long
Mark Worrell one is it's
that
like
was,
our greatest episode probably.
yeah, I
Um,
like that one.
or at
That's good.
least in terms of like thought provoking or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
So I think
but
that
yeah, so that was popular though because it's a spectacle. It's like right now it's AI, so you're like it's in the news, it's in the whatever. It's like, well, whatever something was gonna catch. Like what song's first that's gonna come out that somebody that's gonna do, and it's just gonna
they're
change
done with other
everything.
ones. I think there's other tracks too
Oh,
that are.
I think there's tons now. You can go on YouTube and well, especially the ones that are like Taylor Swift sings Ice Ice Baby or something. I don't, or whatever it is.
All the cover tunes you wanted to hear but didn't.
Yeah, and they're like not perfect, but they're pretty close, kind of thing. Yeah.
And well, that's the thing. It's for the shits and giggles type of thing. It works great because you're like, ha, that's entertaining.
You know what's funny about this topic, and I don't mean to totally sidetrack, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd started a conversation on my Facebook page this week, and I would say like every month or two I do some very controversial thing that's gonna make like half the people hate me. Um,
Yeah,
and this one was about and it just took off like crazy. I mean, there's hundreds of I think there's like 100+ comments now, and it was about tribute bands in particular, like the ones that um copy like they want to look like the Beatles. They talk like the Beatles. They like found conversations of the Beatles playing at Wembley Stadium, and they use that as their like things they say. Like so, it's like a whole. And then they make the stage the same. They use the same clothes, the same guitars, the same amps, the same whatever. And to me, that's like one of the grossest things in music. That was sort of my take. To me, that's the same as like I'm gonna make a movie and I'm gonna call it Star Battle, and I'm gonna literally take the exact Star Wars script. I'm gonna take the same outfits that they used. I'm gonna get people that look and act just like the same as the people that are in the movie, and I'm gonna use the same music, but I'm gonna like play it with a different orchestra or whatever. Like I'm gonna do like everything the same. Um, and then I'm gonna say that's a Star Battle. This is the better Star Wars. This is the ultimate Star Wars experience, even better than the original, and just put that out. You know what I mean? And like, I get why musicians do it. So my whole take was like, I get why musicians do it because it's like a good way to make like real money. And I know I have some good friends. And I was like, I'm probably gonna take this post down because I actually have some good friends that do these tribute bands,
why?
and they make great money. I mean, they make like six figures plus. They're playing to 2,000 to 5,000 people a night. Um, my problem is like, why do you want to see that? Like, I don't understand why regular people want to see that. And so then I think about the AI thing, and it's like, well, maybe that's all. Like, it's just like that's the ultimate copy. Like, I'm just gonna copy Freddie Mercury, and I'm gonna be like, what would be like if Freddie Mercury, Jimmy Page, a Ringo Starr, and Keith Emerson were all the same band, like, and I want that band. That's what I always wanted to hear, that all-star band or whatever.
Mm.
And like, maybe you could sort of do that with AI. And then like, is that what people really want to see? They just want to see like these. They want to see star battles. They'd rather watch star battles than watch a new sci-fi movie.
Well, it's like fan fiction. To basically, it's taking the same ideas and the same characters and putting them in.
No, well, no, but those are different stories, though. I would think it would be more or less like I'm gonna call myself Pennywise, and I'm gonna write a bunch of Stephen King books, but I'm just gonna write them. I'm gonna write the same exact story, and
Okay.
I'm gonna do it in my best Stephen King impression, and
So like,
it almost will look like the same exact story, the same amount of words. I'm gonna put in the same kind of binder. I'm gonna use a similar picture for the cover. Like I'm gonna write the same story, but I'm gonna call myself Pennywise and say I'm the ultimate Stephen King like experience, or whatever. Like it's the same thing. I don't understand it's different. Or you know what? My name's Leonardo da Vinci, and I'm gonna paint a bunch of paintings with the same brushes, the same kind of paint, and use the same material. I'm gonna paint the same paintings that Leonardo da Vinci did, and the same drawings and all that, the same material, and I'm gonna put it out and I'm gonna sell it. I think it's gross.
I think to an extent, I see exactly where you're coming from with that, and I wouldn't say that it doesn't bother me because like you get like that Zoso Zeppelin tribute thing, and they sound great. They sound exactly like Zeppelin does, and they look and they play the part. But the thing that bugs me is just coattailing on somebody. Like they're not seeing the band Zoso. They want to see and experience Led Zeppelin in some way
Yeah.
because beyond their like that's the only way out. You and I would experience them because they were long gone before we
Right.
got to the point where we could get to a.
But you
concert.
would. But the thing is, you're still not seeing Zeppelin, no matter how close they are.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's my point. It's like you're still not getting the authentic thing of them there because it's not the originals, and it can sound
Yeah.
close. And then you have like bands like Greta Van Fleet, since we're talking about Zeppelin, that is basically Led Zeppelin 2.0. Like they took,
Well, so that's more of that's a manufactured thing too, right? Like
but that's
and
exactly my point. It's like they're both manufactured.
So why? Yeah. So if that's successful, so yeah, going back to the AI thing, if the Greta Van Fleet thing is successful, then sure, there's probably going to be a bunch of AI like fakeness that's going to be successful. Be like, what if the Beatles were around today and they had modern technology? Like, what would they sound like today? You know, it's like, what I don't, all
No,
that stuff, and people would like, I don't really get it. Like, I get why musicians do it. For one, it's fun to play music no matter what. I mean, we've played like in pit orchestras and stuff, and like it's fun when there's people that are into it or whatever. It's fun. It's just fun to play loud and play music and have a crowd cheering. But I had a friend who commented on there, and I'll leave out who he is, and I'll just respect. But if you wanted to find out, you could. He he played in a pretty successful tribute band for his favorite band in the whole world, the band that like inspired him. And he was just like, it was so easy to fill the room. It was so easy to get gigs. They never had to like promotion was way different. Like it wasn't that hard to promote. But the thing is, he realized at some point that like he commented like that people weren't coming to see him, right? They were coming to see that band.
Yep.
And in a way, he was actually doing a disservice to that band. Was sort of his interpretation after a while. He's like, even though it was his favorite band and he was sort of doing it as an honor, he just got to the point where it was like, this just feels wrong. You know, like I'm profiting, I'm making a bunch of money off of their likeness. It has nothing to do with me. Maybe I can play the songs and and that's an accomplishment. Maybe I can sound just like it. That's a worthwhile skill. These aren't unskilled musicians doing this,
Yeah.
for sure. It has nothing to do with that. But it was sort of like he just felt like it was kind of gross, and it was just it's kind of sad. Like so, I guess the reason it spurred up to me, and we can get back to the AI thing, but I think it sort of correlates.
No, it doesn't.
It's I did a gig this a couple days ago, and like there was the topic of some of the local festivals, and like when I say local, I mean like Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Toledo, Erie, Detroit, or whatever. Right? These are all cities within a reasonable distance for us to get. And so you apply for these festivals, and whether you get in or not. But then you look at like who gets in, and you just see all these tribute bands. You know, and somebody actually posted a picture in there of they're like, there's this whole festival going on, and it's like this really big festival, and it was like 90% tribute bands. And it's like, well, like that just sucks. I think it
Yeah,
sucks.
that I agree with, because I
It's
think there's a difference between covering it. I mean, obviously, there's a difference between covering a song and doing it in your own style, and then doing it exactly like the other guys did. Because that's not
yeah,
covering it. That's basically
yeah. And
stealing.
I actually don't really have a problem with the cover band thing. Like, it's not my thing. I don't really like it that much. But I get it. It's like the traveling minstrel or whatever. Right? Like somebody, this is like a human thing that's been going on forever. Somebody came with their lute, sang some popular songs that they knew, but they probably put their little own spin on it. Maybe added a couple verses to the song. You know,
That
like
happens all the time.
yeah. I mean, like that was just like that's just like that's human nature. That's just like how we roll.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really good thing. And whether or not I like all the songs they're playing or not, it's irrelevant. They're popular songs. People like to hear them. It's part of just the culture of like humanity and social experiment or whatever. That I have no real problem with it. I don't get why it's more popular than original bands or like why you're seeking out to hear the songs you like. But whatever. I can kind of get it. It's the
Well,
tribute. It's a tribute band thing that I'm like, it's not even really music. I feel like at a certain point, it's really just a spectacle. It's just
oh, yeah.
it's a piece of entertainment. And it's funny. Somebody else comment. They're like, so many of those groups just play to tracks too. So they're just mimicking.
Oh my God,
They're just mimicking like the thing and just dressing like it. And it's like, well, so that's what you like. That's what you want to see. Like that's what like. I mean, I know some of these guys are. I mean, they literally are making like multiple six-figure whatever, and touring around, making good money, playing to let's just say 1,500 to 5 or 6 thousand people, playing these festivals to 10, 20,000 people, making 50 to 100 grand on those gigs or whatever. You're like, I don't understand the appeal to it. But back to the AI thing, it's like, well, if that's successful, geez, the AI thing's probably going to really take off. Maybe they're right. Maybe they should worry. Maybe the tribute bands should worry because they're going to get replaced by AI.
Who knows? I don't
It's
know
like
if
we'll
it's
make a holographic image of Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury. Oh, so the Zappa. Did you ever hear about the Zappa thing?
no. What is this?
Okay, so this is I'm going to try to shorten a very long story down. So there's four Zappa kids, right? There's Dweezil,
Oh
Ahmet,
yeah.
Moon
Okay.
Unit, and Diva, right? So then it got split between. Well, okay, first off, Dweezil is like a guitar player, great guitar player. He's been doing the Zappa plays Zappa tour for 10 plus years or whatever,
More than that.
and it really just like spent like a ton of time like really learning his dad's songs and even like learn all these solos and stuff. Like he really like spent a lot of time to learn it. He's a fantastic musician, right? So he goes and tours with this group, but he had this agreement with his mom who like, um, anyway she like was like, well, all the merch sales that you get from Zappa, because it's the Zappa name, you have to give 50% or whatever to the Zappa Family Trust. And he was like, yeah, that's fair or whatever. But then I guess he like never got paid for any of it. He had to like give all the money and they never paid him back. But then when his mom died, then Amit and Diva took over and like they got the majority of the estate and Dweezil and Moon Unit didn't get the rest, right? Like they're outvoted in the Zappa Family Trust. And then it was like Dweezil couldn't use the name Zappa or something like that in his like thing,
I
even though
remember
it's.
reading about all that stuff. Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah,
so long story short though, then so Dweezil had to like change his whole thing or whatever. But then the Zappa Family Trust put together a band, and like we're using like a Frank holograph or something to like play in the band.
Oh, jeez.
So like I don't know how it turned out, but there's actually really good like Mike Keneally's in it, and like there's like really great musicians in it. So there's a lot of I don't know what it's hard to feel out the drama there, but I guess the point that I was trying to make is like here's like holographic whatever. If you can do that with Frank, now imagine adding AI to it. You could have him say whatever you want.
Yeah, well, they already did that with Michael Jackson too.
Yeah.
They did the holographic Michael Jackson.
Yeah, and that was like 15 years ago, probably, right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think. No, I was out of college by then, so definitely not that long.
Maybe not.
But regardless, the same point applies with that. Is that that is just basically just holding on to the coattails of a family name to pull in more cash. And I don't like. I'm more comfortable with it when it's the kids doing it because that's them. They grew up. It's their dad that's done.
Yeah. I agree.
So it's like that's fine because it's literally in your blood. But when it's Joe Schmo and they just basically do the exact same thing, and they're taking off doing the tribute thing, and your old man is dead, and you're not seeing a dime from something else, though there could be something there. I could see where that would royally piss me off. I'd be like, what the hell, man? Let's split it 50-50 because trust me, you guys wouldn't be on stage with that draw without that name on it.
Yeah.
And that's where the issue is like,
well, so I was asking about that with the tribute bands, and it's like, I think that they get like royalties, the band, but it's just like you're normally like if a cover band came in, you get some royalties. So the venue deals with the royalties. So I guess what I'm saying is your Zoso or whatever, like as far as I know, only like 45 cents for each time you play or whatever it goes to Zeppelin, even though you just sold 10,000 tickets, whatever. It's like that seems wrong. I feel like more of the money should go to Zeppelin in that case.
Especially when it's that level of detail. It's not like some guy with an acoustic guitar in a bar.
You're trying to steal the likeness and everything. Or not steal, but you're trying to copy the likeness. Yeah.
It's come on, where's really the difference to an extent? But it's like when it's an exact copy, when you're calling yourselves a tribute to whatever band, you act like them, you try to memorize the stage banter and putting it out.
Yeah,
that's a whole other level of taking something than I just have the chords, so I'm going to sing this song up in a coffee house stage. So that's a totally different thing. So if you're up on stage and you're just doing some cover tune, following the chords, 45 cents, fine. But, again, if you're like, I bought the official Kiss makeup and do it the exact same proportions that Gene Simmons did and bought the high-heeled shoes and go around calling myself Gene Simmons, but I spell it Jean rather than Gene.
Right.
That's like, dude, you would not be famous in any regard whatsoever if that other band didn't exist. Whatsoever. And which is where I can see where I would have beef with that. It's like, you're not famous in your own right. You're riding the coattails of somebody else's success. And it's tough to be coming from a space of pure artistry complaint on that without a little bit of, damn it, that's a good way to make money.
Well, again, it's funny. I started my post with like, I don't begrudge. Literally, I'm like, I don't begrudge any musician who does this path. Like, it's a good way to support yourself and your family and blah blah blah. But yeah, again, I mean, it's no one's coming to see you. They're coming to see that other group. It's kind of
as that other group.
I just don't get like.
You know what it is?
I don't have any idea like why.
Wait. I have it. It's musical catfishing. That's what it is. Okay, now that everybody hates me,
I don't get the appeal. So one of the things that came up in the conversation on there was, well, an orchestra is just a Beethoven thing or whatever. Right?
Yeah, that whole cover man.
And thing. I was like, well, I guess I don't see it the same way. One, there's so much interpretation in classical music, and intentionally so. Mm-hmm. Or there should be. There's sort of a bad trend on that front, but we'll ignore that topic for right now. And then there's the fact that like an orchestra, right? Like it's not just the Beethoven orchestra generally, right? It's
Yeah.
like they play the fifth and they probably play like Brahms or something else that day, and then the next week they play Tchaikovsky and Mahler or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
they're not, and then like the conductor doesn't dress up like Beethoven when it's
No,
like
not at all.
Beethoven week. Um, and then you can listen to the same piece by different conductors, and sometimes it can be pretty darn different
Oh,
between
totally.
you know
Totally.
so and somewhat intentionally so, like, and one might be literally like 10 minutes longer than the other version or whatever. um so I don't feel like it's the same. I mean, certainly there's an angle there that's similar, but um that's not really the intent of the classical music. The classical music orchestra, right, is trying to present music in the best way they can, in the best interpretation of their musical abilities or whatever that they can. But it would be fair to say that it's not like the oboist makes any decisions in that regard, right? It's purely the conductor's sort of thing.
99.9%. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's
So,
really it's really the conductor's interpretation, and I think that's fair. So another argument that I saw was that, well, there's a lot of musicians who are pretty good, but they can't write anything, and they don't, you know, or they're not very good at writing, and they don't have their own groups or whatever, and they're not particularly original. So they, it's a good fit for them to play in tribute bands or the orchestra or whatever, because they're not necessarily creative in that respect, but very proficient at the instrument. And I think that's a fair assessment too. But again, I I don't see those things the same. I just don't. I really honestly feel like it's the same thing to see a tribute band as it is to go see Star Battles. I mean, it's like you're not even trying to be different. And people say, well, I've seen multiple Beatles tribute bands and they didn't sound the same, and some were good and some were bad. But that wasn't. That's just like a human thing. Like that. Would it still be okay for me to make Star Battles with all my friends and I put the people that look the most like the people from the original movie in those roles, And maybe none of us are actors. We're not any good at it. And
have you?
then and maybe we don't play, maybe I would even record all the instruments myself, you know?
Mhm.
But I literally copy the whole thing. Wouldn't that seem wrong? Like, would you go see that movie?
That's a have you seen the Princess Bride remake?
No, did they actually make it? I thought that
No,
it was.
here's the thing. Here's the thing with that. They did, but it's an unofficial remake. It was basically all these actors acting out the scenes, recording it on their cell phone, and it's
Uh,
hysterical. I mean, it is absolutely to the T. Quotes the movie to the whole thing. Terrible set design because it's like in their backyard, and
yeah.
whatever. But it's brilliant. It's absolutely on point, and I loved it. It was like an hour, same length, everything through the movie, and it would be like a different actor for the main role every scene
Yeah,
because
right.
a different actor would do it, but they did get Fred Savage to reprise his role a little bit, and then it was like all Seth Rogen was in it. The guy from Mad Men was in it. I'm trying to pick the scenes that stuck out. Who's the guy that plays Strax? What's his face? Dave Bautista was in it
Yeah.
as Andre the Giant. And like so it was all like if you could imagine somebody playing that role, they did it, and it was great. Like it's definitely worth checking out. I'll send you the link, but it's a hysterical thing to watch because I grew up watching The Princess Bride on
Same.
repeat.
Yeah.
So it
Have you shown
and
your kids yet?
not yet.
Oh, my kids love it.
I gotta get them into it.
They'll love it. It's easy.
Hopefully, there's been other stuff where I thought it'll take off with the kids, and they're like, "What is this?" Like I tried showing them Star Wars, and they're like, "This is boring."
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah,
what?
yeah. My youngest in particular doesn't like Star Wars at all.
And I tried the Lord of the Rings, though I was grading the whole time. So when they said I don't, okay, fine, we'll stop it.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings didn't go very far. Harry Potter has had no traction in my house.
Harry Potter got traction here, but not the Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. Uh,
I feel like The Matrix is going to be a hit, but I feel like it would be unfair to show my kids that movie until they're at least teenagers.
yeah, because you got to understand what's kind of
There's a lot of like psychological or not what is it? I don't know.
philosophical idea.
Philosophical, yeah. Like
You know,
you have to go a little bit deeper and understand
yeah,
some
you
things.
can't just like watch the action and think that. I mean, you can be entertained by that, but you don't get the fullness of what's happening when you try to get what they're picking at.
Yeah.
With you
Yeah,
know,
I want them to have that same experience of like they wake up, and you're like, "Oh, wait, what?" Like,
yep, yep,
"Holy wow, could that be real?" Like you
yep,
want them to have that sort of existential crisis when they watch it, right?
yep.
That was the beauty of that movie. So
And
you'd be selling them short if you show it to them too early, right? But
though I will say this much: I read through all of Shakespeare when I was in my teenage years, and I just started. What is it? The guy that played Moriarty in the latest with Benedict
yeah, yeah,
Cumberbatch.
yeah, yeah. He was great. Yeah.
Yeah, he was phenomenal, and he plays the lead in Hamlet. And oh my god, dude, he's brilliant. But it
When
was like
did when did that come out?
I don't know. I just caught clips of it and then watched the whole thing. But
But like in the
he,
last like 10 years or whatever, like they
yeah,
made a
I
Hamlet
think,
movie. Okay.
and not it looks like it's a recording of a stage production.
Oh, okay.
But he's brilliant. Two, it was like I finally got it. Like all the jokes, it was like it made sense to me now
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, and I can
Sure.
translate the old English a little bit faster. But it was absolutely brilliant. I don't know how we got on this, but regardless, but I think this ties in the sense that like they're still doing Shakespeare. They're still word for word exactly what the guy did.
Yeah.
Now it's acting, and it's not the same level of being a musician and having to have following that. And I guess in one sense, would we be so intently not? I'm not fiercely against a tribute thing. I can see the both angles of it. But would it be the same level of angst if we looked at it like it was acting? Like if there was a movie called like the Beatles thing and they paid
Yeah.
actors to do it and they played all the things, we wouldn't take the same offense to that as we do to the same level as a tribute band, so to speak. Um,
I guess what I is nothing against anyone again who's doing it, right? Like these
yeah,
are
absolutely not.
absolutely phenomenal
It's because fundamentally,
musicians or actors or whatever you want to call them, right?
if you
They're
got
really
that call, you'd take the gig. If you look at we'll give you this much. Okay.
yeah. Actually, it's funny. I
Yeah.
had a friend that has recently tell me about it was an ZZ Top one that they could do, and he'd be great for it. And it's kind of a cool one, right? You get to play all these Billy Gibbons things or whatever. It's like that would be all right. But he's like, I don't think I could do it. So he turned it down. But like he was like the money was really hard to turn down.
That that tends to motivate me. And I mean, to an extent, that's very motivating for me. There's music that I don't like, but it's like, okay, if you see those zeros on the end of the check, it's like, I'm in. You
Yeah.
know,
I think you should pick something that at least. I mean, the people that I know that are successful in that, I mean, they really do like the music, and um, maybe they feel weird about it, but it's like some of their favorite groups. So, I would suggest if you did that, I wouldn't be like, oh, you know what, I could do a Bonnie Riot one if you don't really listen to Bonnie Raitt, like.
exactly.
But maybe if it was like U2 or something, like I know you like U2 or Coldplay or whatever, those kind of groups that you've liked in the past, you're like, oh, I've learned a lot of those songs, and I could probably like really work that up.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah. That the funny thing is like it
and like I could probably
out.
grow a goatee or whatever and wear a beanie.
I'd have to shave my head though. Um,
Well, if you
but that,
you could get away with a beanie thing, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
maybe I try shave the sides of my head, just keep the hair on the top, type of thing.
Get some Vox AC 30s, or isn't that what he used? I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, that's exactly what he used. Oh man, did you ever? On that note, did you ever? Speaking of tribute stuff, here's the interesting thing: the latest album by U2 with that called "Songs of Surrender,"
haven't
where
heard it.
they remade like all the hits off of all their albums.
Okay.
It's awful. It is terrible. Like, and I was like a huge U2 fan. I'm not so much anymore. I enjoy the music, but I'm not like gotta have everything. And I was like, all right, well, I'll check it out. And I was like, I had to stop. So I'm like, how do you screw this up so bad? Like, it sounded to me, it was like it was a YouTube cover band of old guys with a lot of money that bought great equipment that just wanted to play somewhere in a coffee house and kind of like got together and did it. And it's
But Adam, have you heard St. Louis's own U3, the #1 U2 experience in the world? Even better than the original.
even better than the real thing.
Yeah,
There you
there you
go.
go. Exactly. Dang it.
You missed that
I
shot.
missed it.
At least I was here to pick it up. But yeah, it's like,
Now I'm gonna have that song in my head the rest of the night. Thanks.
yeah, it's great. Just play it back, but don't do the new version of it. I don't think I'm gonna think, but it's worth giving a listen to see how long you can make it through it. Like I did like 4 tracks, and I did like some of the songs that I love, and I'm like, oh God, no. Get me the old stuff. And the funny thing is I just thought I was being unbelievably pretentious, like I kind of am. And then I saw the reviews, and everybody's like, no, this was a bad idea. This was not something that should have been made public. These it's like, no, it just
Yeah, but they
no.
probably still sold like 10 million copies or
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, at least this time you had the option to listen to it or not. Rather, when they came out with I forget what album it was, but Apple put it on all.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was like, I like you too, but I also like my decision-making abilities. So you done messed up there, Ron. So it.
I mean, I'll give them credit that they've always tried to be somewhat on the forefront of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. But
They didn't play the old rock star card.
Nope. They continually developed themselves when they decided to develop themselves. This Songs of Surrender was a retardation of their musical movement.
It's a
forward.
cash in. Do they still own their songs, or do they sell it to one of those things?
No, they still own their songs, and they're actually doing like a residency in Vegas.
They should just sell them at this point.
But that's another thing that's a bit of a thing that goes in with the tribute type of thing. Selling those songs is basically enabling all that type of tribute thing and covers and no real pushing forward of the musical ideas, because the main reason people are buying them is to cash in on the replays. It's not like we're buying this outside of just a monetary investment. It's
I
not
know.
and that's stifling the innovation. And I think we talked about this before, but that's the one thing where I was like, I totally respect Taylor Swift going, okay, fine, you bought them, I'm re-recording them all.
Right.
It's like giving them the big middle finger and walking away.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. And kudos to her for doing that. I barely ever have listened to her stuff whatsoever, but that's me.
It's the problem. It's you. No, I was kidding.
It's me. It's a problem. It's me. Yeah. I do know that song because one of my students wanted to learn it.
Did you see the that Ticketmaster trial, which thing or in the Senate or whatever? And it was just like a total spectacle as well.
It was just like trying to get rid of the fees type of thing.
Well, it was like Ticketmaster's a monopoly. And what's funny is like every senator was like it didn't matter if they were Republican or Democrat. They were like, "You're obviously a monopoly. Like this is bullcrap.
Yeah.
Like nothing's happening, right?" But
Yeah.
what was annoying about it was literally like every one of the senators would be like, "Have you looked at yourself? Maybe you're the problem." Whatever they were doing. Like every like Taylor Swift sort of like, maybe you could shake it off, or I don't like any like. It was so terrible. It was like just terrible. And they probably loved it because they're like, oh, we get to seem cool now that we know Taylor Swift isms.
Does Taylor Swift use the internet on my phone? Does that make it's like watching senators talk about technology is just like, as much as my mom can't use technology to save her life, she's clearly more capable.
Oh, like all the like the Twitter trials and Facebook trials and stuff. It's always like
you sit there like, oh my God, like at least have your staffer fill you in on something basic.
Yeah.
And-
yeah, basically, you have no reality, no sense of reality of anything.
No, not tied in with anything with that. And that's also the scary thing with AI. It's like, you guys are going to regulate this, Do you even have regular bowel movements? I mean, how the hell are you going to be?
Well, what's kind of funny though is that that you for that respect to it, they're gonna say, well, don't make the AI be able to think about blah 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 or whatever. And it's like it doesn't really do that, but don't
Yeah.
tell them.
Yep. Make them seem like they're important. Sure,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. We'll make sure it doesn't
Well,
do the thing that it doesn't do.
yeah.
Okay. But so with the music aspect of it, it's like in terms of the creative thing, it's clearly got to have the inputs, regardless of what they are, from somebody being like, "Go ahead and do this." It's not like
Sure.
the AI is running in a thing and being like, "Oh, I'm just going to do this thing today." For now, I could potentially see somebody programming it to gain some form of satisfaction from putting certain things together and having it accumulate its own tastes with that. It's kind of like that X Files episode going way back where they like released uh, proto. Basically, it was trying to recreate life in the internet the way that it evolved with like a proto molecule coming together and following a protein.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have this code and we'll release it on the internet and it'll propagate itself and create its own AI type of thing. Clearly fictional, at least at the time. Now it's like, well, could be done to an extent, but we're clearly not to that level. So if something developed along those lines, the questions are is like, is it going to be valid in terms of is it really creative, or is it something that because it's doing what it's told, it happens to put things together in a certain way, and therefore it's the output of the inputs of the person that programmed it. And then at what point does the original programming facilitate that particular script to become its own thing? Like the sentience question. It's like, well, you put it
I
in
don't
the
think
thing.
we're even close, but
Yeah, oh, I don't think we're even close with that in terms of AI. But and specifically looking at it.
I think it's specifically because it's not meant to do that. Like,
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
configured in a way that could even happen. Really,
We're just building a smart tool. It's just like
it's really still database searching and like making a probability against what stuff makes the most sense or not. It's,
yeah. So the question is,
that's how like Deep Blue worked. That's how Watson works. That's how all these things work.
but those were like Deep Blue at first was micro focused on chess and going through that.
Yeah,
And
but
then,
it's still like it's a probability. Like, oh, probability wise, this should be a better move than that move.
Did Carlson ever play Deep Blue? I don't think he has. I know Kasparov did.
Kasparov did.
I don't think Carlson has.
He probably wouldn't win. But yeah.
I mean, at this point,
Dude, I watch. So we're talking chess right now. So I don't know if anyone's chess nerds. I saw a video the other day about Carlsen. He's basically like the GOAT right now, right? And he's been champion for anyone who doesn't follow chess, which is probably everyone listening. If there's anyone listening, he's won like the championship the last 5 years. What's kind of funny about him, especially in the internet age, is what's that thing called Stockfish? Stockfish is like this
yeah.
algorithm. I think it's even better than Deep Blue or whatever. It looks like all the like different like possible outcomes, and it's really whatever. And there's like a video where Magnus had got it was like a 3850 rating after this game, and it was a speed game, like 3 minute speed game.
Yeah.
And it was like it's the most absurd. Like so, Stockfish is rated at 3700, so it was even rated higher than Stockfish. And there was a move that he made that Stockfish like gave a super low rating to initially, and it was just like the video was all about like how this move was even better than what Stockfish could think of. And Stockfish looks at like the next 100 moves or whatever, and what the most probability likelihood of all these things to come out. So it was like this move's like a super negative move. Like that was a stupid move, basically. But Magnus had done this while he's like chatting with his buddies, like eating cereal or whatever, in the speed chess thing, And he makes this move that like stumped Stockfish. And at the end of the game review or whatever, it was like 3850 was his rating at the end of the game. It's insane. Insane. So it's like it's one of those like that's what AI doesn't do, right? It doesn't have instinct. So that was obviously an instinct move from Magnus. I think they said he looked at it for like 20 seconds, but it was still like there's no way he calculated every possible scenario.
Yeah,
and
well,
figured out.
That
But
was
he
the underlying
but he
thing.
sort of saw something else, right? He saw it develop in his head, and he was able to like quickly get to that, like, oh, this is gonna work. I think if this works, if this person doesn't do this other thing or whatever. Um, so
Well,
I don't know. It's fascinating to think about. So that's like an instinct, which is like the
the
thought
instinct.
of your. It's like your conscious thought couldn't have never done it, but your unconscious thought could does it, right?
Yep.
And that's a lot of music.
That's what I was going to say. That's a lot of music. That's where weird. It's like, if you take the chord progression for Creep, normally you wouldn't do something like that. You just wouldn't put it in that particular order, but it worked for them, and it had that emotive value, and it stuck.
Yeah,
If you're just putting things together in a, for lack of better terms, in a robotic way because it happens to be formulaic, you miss the potential emotive thing with
yeah,
that. So, and that ends up being a dead end. It just goes doop, and it sure, it can sound okay, but you don't get the emotional drive that new chord that you pulled out of your butt. And it happened to be like, oh, that was a mistake, but that actually kind of works, and go with it.
right.
And with the Carlson thing, it's like, and that's the difference between a composer and a computer doing it. A computer will like the chess computers look at like 6 billion
Yeah,
possibilities
right.
action, and Magnus is thinking of three because he knows the rest of them aren't valid because like
Yeah, he
these are
did some homework, and there's so much like interesting things. Yeah, I was thinking it's kind of like ear training's a funny thing in music because we spend all this time like understanding intervals and hearing chords and be able to like write it down and all that stuff. But like on the bandstand, especially as an improvising musician, um, there's a lot of times where I hear something and I just play it
hmm
back. I don't think intervals. I don't think chords, but I can play it back like just instantly without even
yeah.
thinking about it. It's very natural, and I'm not thinking about intervals. Not thinking about where it is in the chord. I'm not thinking about how it is in the harmony. I'm not thinking about. There's not enough time for that. There's no time at all for that. So there's sort of like this built-in like thing in the back of my head that hears it and is like, oh, it's that. But I could never consciously do that in real time. It's not even
Yes.
possible.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so how do you quantify that stuff? So the AI is not doing that, and it's probably not processing it,
Well, I don't
even
think.
though it's that fast, even
How
in a
are you
way.
going to be able to do that at an artificial level? Because that's exactly what Jack. When I was getting lessons from Jack Shant, he said he's like, you start with the analytical stuff up here in the front of your brain, and you're thinking about it all, and then the sound and the way that the harmony functions together quickly becomes, or through practice becomes second nature, and it becomes an instinctual thing. So where you don't even think about, well, I'm going to play this particular scale over this. You just do it because it's how you've heard it and how you've drilled it, and it seems like it
Yeah,
would just.
you shouldn't when you're improvising. You shouldn't be thinking like, oh, this is C major scale, or this is Dorian, or this is this chord, or
Yeah,
this or that.
exactly. I never think that way outside of when I'm distinctly practicing, and I'm watching the
That's the
harmony.
goal. I mean, it's hard not to. Occasionally, you go there, you're like, oh, what key was this in again? But
Yeah,
like,
but ultimately,
hopefully,
you're.
you could let that go when you're playing, and then yeah, it's gonna probably sound like crap for a while until you can like figure out how it's
Until you
supposed
just
to work.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nobody comes out sounding great to start.
Did you ever see?
But
There's that Victor Wooten video that goes around, and he's like,
that music theory is easy. Oh, shut up. No, it's not. But I get what he's
no,
saying.
what was it? It wasn't that one. It was the there's like this groove playing, and he's like, boom, he's like, now listen, folks, every note is gonna sound good. Like this is how we should teach music. We shouldn't be teaching like this is the right key or bad key or whatever. Um, and he's like, I don't have perfect pitch. There's a groove going on. I don't know what note it is. He's like, oh, I could find it, but like, he's like, let me just show you. And so he just plays like, da-dum, 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 like kind of plays up the scale. And he's just like, look, like any note will work because of this groove and how it goes against this thing. But that's a whole other thing. Anyways, I was just reminded by it. But he,
See, that would be the other test is how would you program an AI to improvise?
if you ever listened to Band in the Box,
No.
So Band in a Box is this tool that jazz musicians not so much anymore because there's the iReal book,
Yeah.
but you can still buy it. And I guess it's getting better. It's kind of like Finale, like it's like these takes 8,000 years to get like a minor update, even though there's new updates all the time. Like it doesn't really get any better from version to version, but but you still pay the extra $200 for it. Anyway, Band in the Box, it will do like improvised solos from the computer, and they're really bad, like
Yeah.
really bad. It's pretty funny. It's comical to hear, but it's based on like sound judgment. It's like, okay, the most important notes are these chord tones, and like you should probably land on a chord tone on a strong beat, and those kind of things. And it sort of plays with the rules that were implemented, but you realize quickly that like those rules aren't very good. Like that's not necessarily musical.
Yeah.
Um, music theory should always follow music, not the other way around, and it's sort
It
of
always
it's
has,
better.
though. That's the thing that everybody, I think, is a big thing
Well, it
that people.
has, but it isn't in a way. Like that, it's a problem with jazz education in particular right now. Maybe less so with classical, but it's sort of hard to compare with classical
It's a different beast.
because people are playing pieces, mostly playing pieces that are quite old at this point. Um, so, or there's sort of like this delineation, like I'm a performer and I'm a composer, right? There's a pretty big gap there. But in jazz, there's a lot of like you're sort of doing all of those things,
Hmm.
um, but maybe not to the same degree. But regardless, the way to teach it in college, it's been sort of broken because that's not what jazz was ever really about. So it's like, oh, let's make a system that you follow to learn how to improvise. So here's the bebop scale, and here's how you could apply it, and here's the chord scale theory and stuff like that. And this is like the Berkeley, um, what do I want to call it? It's the Berkeley curse or something like that that happened. That now everybody uses these systems instead of they didn't really learn it the right way in a way. Um, we could argue about that another time, but yeah. So then you start applying those rules to it, and you get this sort of really stagnant kind of jazz
Well, it goes
improv.
back to the whole thing of the cookie cutter guitar players.
Yeah,
That technical skills out the butt, but if you played them all and switched between them, I wouldn't be able to tell which one's which.
sure.
It's to an extent. There's obviously standouts, but and maybe that's also because part of the. I remember when I was getting my master's degree, the comps they handed me a sheet of paper and said, "Okay, who wrote what time period? Who wrote it? And what's the name?" Which was like, holy, it huge swaths. I got something by Haydn. I didn't get the piece right, but I got the composer right with that. Well, that's like thousands upon thousands of pizzas. Good luck.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
but you can tell stylistically, usually, composer wise, like that's something that I've noticed because I love my car. I hate the fact that the radio comes on I turn it on. I just want it to go right to my phone. I don't care. I never listen to the radio, so I just turn it to the classical station just to have something. And it's at a point now where it's like the car turns on. I'm like, oh, that's Mozart's this, and boop, oh look, I'm right, cool. Because
Yeah,
the radio will display it comes on the display what the radio is playing. I'm like, oh, huh, all that paid off. Yay, here's the skill. I'm highly specialized in something that will never save somebody, but okay,
yeah,
it's still fun. Um,
sure.
but yeah. So, anyways, the fundamental thing with the AI is that it's not at the level where everybody thinks it's at. The music that is being quote unquote created is not being created by the AI itself. It's being created by the programmers telling the AI what to do. Ultimately, the AI goes,
Well, it's pulling from stuff that's
and it's
already
pulling
known.
from art. Yes, it's pulling from the artists that have the big hits and basically saying, well, that works, so we're just going to keep going with that. To an extent. Granted, for full disclosure, I haven't listened to that Drake song, or Drake Weekend Smash Up through the whole thing. It's like, oh, that sounds like it. Okay, moving on. It is the way that I approach that. So I don't subscribe to the thing that it's going to take everything over. I can see the issues that we previously discussed in terms of like Taylor Swift singing Bohemian Rhapsody or, stuff like that. The entertainment and spectacle value is huge. So clearly there's going to be a burst of that once it becomes accessible to everybody,
Sure.
everyday people. They're just going to be like, what if, Madonna sang the Piegesu by Foray? God, no, but okay, whatever. But it's just one of those things that you can just do just uh,
For fun.
for the full entertainment, and that's honestly where things could take off because that's the way some stuff has happened. It's just been some guy in his
So
basement.
okay, here's a question. Let's say you have MC Hammer do "Walk" by Pantera, right? Like if that video goes viral. Who gets paid for that?
That's
Does Pantera get paid for it because it's their song, or does MC Hammer get paid for it because he's the performer? Like, how does that?
Where do you do with the rights distribution with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure.
We'll leave that for the lawyers. That'll probably be AI, and we can let them argue about it. There was a case with some lawyer that just used an AI to argue his case, and the AI cited cases that never existed. Like,
I heard about that. Yeah,
yeah, it's like,
right.
yeah, I think we're far away from Skynet, but that right there, that's a problem.
Pretty sure he got like disbarred and stuff too. I think.
That aspect of it is still ongoing. Like they're pushing it, and he's like being like, I didn't know, and it's like, well, you should know.
It's your job to know. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be like, yeah, man. That would
Not
be
not to sidetrack, and I know we're running a little out of time on this
We
thing.
should probably wrap things up a little bit too.
But we've been going for a while. I did a jury duty thing. I don't know if we talked about that, but like one of the things I realized specifically was don't trust your lawyer to take care of you.
No. I mean,
You've got to do a lot of work on your own. So if you ever something happens to you, either way, by the way, not the defendant versus prosecution, like in this particular case, the prosecution just blew it, in my opinion. They could have just done a few things that would have been enough to like maybe sway the case, but they left so much reasonable doubt that it was like, really, you didn't like think that we would be interested in this particular information, and there was no way to ask for it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, certainly, the person who was on that side would have been like, why don't you have that? So just assume, regardless if you're in a trial somehow, that you could not trust your lawyer, no matter how good they are or not. You should spend a lot of time and effort.
It's human fallibility. The simplest thing is like you're gonna fail yourself, but if you're hiring somebody to do a job, you better like
just assume that like the people you're working. I mean, unless you're like a zillionaire and you can buy like the highest best law firm ever. That's
even those
really,
guys work on a team. Like it's not like.
But yeah, but they probably have some kind of like pride, like we have to win or whatever. But like if you're like a local whatever crappy court, like these people are not like the top of the class lawyers or whatever, right? You're not probably not affording that person. So you're affording the person that like they got past the bar and whatever, and they're probably pretty smart. But like it's a job. They like to go do other things. Like they have other hobbies they're interested in. Like they're not like just obsessed with the law or whatever. Like they're human. So you gotta help them out a little bit.
What is it? They need to be Gareth Cootstory, the maritime lawyer.
I don't even know what that means.
Arrested Development.
Oh, blah blah blah.
And Bob Lala.
Yeah.
Bob Lala, Lobs Law. God, it was so good. So good. Disappointing it's gone. Anyway, so thank you all for joining us on this refresh of Wood, Air, and Metal. We'll try to get more of these out now that life has gotten some...
Yeah, it's summertime. Summertime.
Yeah, where it's hot as hell and I'm still wearing a sweatshirt.
It has not rained here in like 3 weeks, so everybody's grass is dead too. So it's fun.
Which is nice for me not having to cut it.
Yeah, word.
Amen to that. I can practice more.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll see you all in the next one.
Peace.